Welcome to the Marvel Alliance podcast, where we cover anything and everything to do with the Marvel Universe. From the comics, TV, and movies, we will go from the Earth 616 to the Multiverse to the TVA in order to bring the Marvel Universe right to you. I am your friendly neighborhood Brent.
And I'm the Asgardian Travis.
Alliance
Assemble.
Assemble. Yes, Travis, thank you for filling in tonight. Chris is he is otherwise occupied. I guarantee you he would much rather be here. He is working and he's working at his day job. You know, it's never fun when the day job makes you clock in on a Friday night, but this is where he's at right now. So Travis, I do appreciate you filling in. You know, you filled in for me several times, including a few episodes ago with like 8 hours notice or whatever it was. Appreciate that again. But welcome back.
Happy to be here, Brent. Sad Chris had to miss, but I'm always eager to step in, especially there's content to talk about, which is always great. And of course, there's rumors of more content and like a top of the line episode coming down the line next week, which is usually what happens when I jump on here. I jumped on here for you before, and then
Yeah,
Daredevil showed up the following week.
the trailers and stuff. Yeah,
The trailers. I wanted to check back on the Marvel notes that I have just to check to see what things I actually missed, but I just didn't have the time today, with a kid and all. But I'm excited to be here. So
well, and there is rumors of a Marvel trailer next week. Of course, this would be the blueprint, Madam Web herself, but that's just rumors at this point. I haven't seen anything official.
Still, one of my most enjoyable streams was joining you guys for Morbius. So made up for watching the film.
Well, I am very curious what that trailer will look like, so I hope it's true. But let's go ahead and get the plugs out of the way. We do have 7 shows covering the wide range of geek and nerdom. To see the full schedule, go ahead and check out the show notes below and subscribe to the Geek Ultimate Alliance on Twitter at GUA Pod Network, so you know when all the shows will drop. And of course, over on Patreon, we are doing We Can Watch This All Day. Our next movie for this is going to be Infinity War. Our next movie is one of the big ones. We've hit 2018 at this point, where we're almost to the end of the Infinity Saga with this, but we're there. And then, of course, there are other things on the Patreon as well. Travis, you and Joe have been doing some stuff over on the DC side of things. What are you guys doing?
Yeah, we're going through the DC films through the years, Brent. We've gone since Batman 66, the film, all the way up through. We've done some TV movies as well, including John Wesley Shipp's The Flash pilot. The last episode we did was A Road to Perdition, and the most recent one coming up at the end of October is The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I'm really excited to watch that one, but it all comes to a crashing halt in November when we do Catwoman. I have not watched that film in its entirety, I don't think ever, and I have to sit through that. So if I survive that, we will continue going on after that. But it's fun going back to the DC film.
I have never seen Catwoman, and I'm not changing that just for your Patreon show. I can listen without watching it myself.
Let us suffer for you. Let us suffer for you.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Road to Perdition. Not a lot of people realize that's a comic book movie, but sure enough, it is.
It was the first watch for me too, and it was enjoyable going in knowing that you're not getting bang bang. Psh, psh.
Yeah, no, it's different. I've seen it, but it's been a long time for me. All right, and of course, let's go ahead and remind you to rate and review the podcast feeds, both the Marvel Alliance solo feed as well as the GUA Network feed as well. Star Wars Alliance and DC Alliance also have solo feeds. And then, of course, thank you to our official sponsor of Marvel Alliance, Organic Price Books. They are, like I said, the official sponsor. They sell graphic novels, omnibuy, collected editions at great discounts on everything in stock and pre-orders. You can earn rewards on every purchase that you do, and you can earn discounts to use on your next order. Use promo code MarvelGUA to save $2 off every order. Use our referral link listed in the show notes. Let them know that you are a Marvel Alliance listener. Again, that code MarvelGUA. All right, Travis, you do have some content this week.
Yes.
Loki season 2 episode 3. But before we dive into this, can I get an overview for you of where you're at with Loki so far this season? The first couple episodes. What are you thinking? Just so I have a baseline for where you're at going into this one.
I'm loving it as I did the first season. The characters just been stuck with these guys for so long now. Mobius is a favorite of mine. I'm really interested to see how his character is going to develop. But we get other ones like Renslayer and a few other hunters that are even intriguing to me where they're going to go forward. I'm all for this, Brent, and I can't believe I was thinking about it when I was watching. I had watched episodes 2 and 3 today, so I was thinking about this as I was watching too. They really turned this show, and this show is fabulous, out of one scene in Endgame. And I absolutely love it that they had the foresight to do that. And again, it's talking about next level planning. And I just love what we got out of that. I thought about that. Just one scene needing to be devoted to this show. And we got a fantastic show. And this most recent episode is probably my favorite of the season so far.
Okay, well let's get into this. Let's get into this recent episode 3, titled 1893. Non-spoilers, Travis. What are you thinking?
I'm really enjoying this. We got to see He Who Remains, but not necessarily him, but him. And it really is. We got to see a paradox as well of leaving the book and you giving it to the person who creates it, and he is a cycle. And I really enjoyed just thinking about that. Like, does this chicken come before the egg? That's the whole thing that comes there. And obviously the Mobius and Loki stuff of it all. I just enjoy the pairing. I could sit there and watch them, like last episode, eat pie, or this episode, just to banter back and forth for the entire episode. Is similar to when we watched No Way Home, all the Spider-Man chatting. I could sit and watch them do that for the entire hour and a half of the movie. Same thing here. They give me that in bunches, and I just enjoyed this episode. We got a whole lot more layers to this. I think there's a couple things coming out of this that might happen going forward that I want to discuss with you.
Yeah, we'll obviously get more specific here after our first break, but I have more theories after this episode, and I have more questions after this episode. Some of those feed into each other. This episode felt different than others that we have done, but I feel like this year they are really, and we've heard Feige talk about this, they're really going for this episodic feel. And it really does feel like each episode has had its own contained story. Of course, they are telling a larger story, a larger narrative of all three of them, but each one has had their own thing, and this one is the same as that. It's titled 1893, so I don't think it's too spoilery to tell you that's where the bulk of this episode takes place, but not the entirety of the episode. And the fact that it does take place in 1893, I think, is incredibly interesting, and I like what they do with it. Is it my favorite episode of the season? I don't know. Probably not, but the questions that I have, it's definitely the one that's posed the most interesting questions to me, especially at the end. There's one question that they absolutely want you asking, and I'm asking it, and I think we'll all ask it here at the end. But let's go ahead and take our first break, and then we'll get into the spoilers. So, listeners, we don't control the volume on the ad, so go ahead. I'll give you a 3 count and turn your volume down if you want. Sometimes they do come in a little loud. 3, 2, 1. We'll be right back. All right, let's dive into the spoilers at this point. So the episode starts out in 1868 on the sacred timeline. Okay, it's titled 1893, but the episode starts in 1868 on the sacred timeline. I love that they're telling us if it's a sacred or a branched timeline at this point. Basically, we have Ravonna Renslayer. She finally shows up. We haven't seen her yet. And we have Miss Minutes. So right out of the gate, I got a Fact or Fiction wrong last week because I didn't think Miss Minutes would be until next week. I just had to laugh when I was like, we're like 10 seconds in, and there she is. I'm like, all right, well, you know what? I'm going to enjoy it because I do like the Miss Minutes character. She's fun. But Miss Minutes is setting stuff up. She's basically trying to convince Ravonna, and it did take a little bit of convincing, to give this book, set this book that she has, which is we find out is a TVA manual, on this windowsill. It ends up falling in through the window, but of course, and it goes to who we would find out is a young Victor Timely. What were you thinking at this point?
I was intrigued. I was curious to see why it was taking so long for her to actually do it, like the back and forth for the devotion she had in the prior season to the guy up top. So, and then just seeing him grab the book, honestly, I thought it would be much more futuristic too going forward. So I knew something would happen because of it, but I didn't expect what we got when we do jump time here in a little bit.
As I recall, when Ravonna left towards the end of season 1, when she used her TemPad, opened a time door, and left, she was going in search basically of free will.
Yeah.
Sylvie kills He Who Remains. Allegedly, they all have free will. I think that's open for debate, but they have alleged free will. And then she just circles right back to working with Miss Minutes on behalf of He Who Remains. So I was a little surprised she did that, but to me, it seems like she's somebody who just craves power. She wants to be in charge. She likes having control, and that's just who she is, and that's fine. It makes her, she's a really interesting character, so I'm okay with that. We jump to 1893 at this point. Actually, before we go to 1893, we do check in briefly in the TVA, and basically the time loom is still messed up. Obviously, they're still talking about that they either need He Who Remains temporal aura, or they need Miss Minutes because she has admin or root access, and basically she can override the controls. They think Obi's not 100% sure, but they think that she can. So Mobius, Loki, they go to 1893, and this is the point when they tell us they go to 1893 on a branch timeline. They went there because they found and they were able to track Ravona's TemPad. It's at this point I'm realizing Ravona created a Nexus event. When she did that, she gave that to him. She created a Nexus event. She created a branch timeline.
That must have been why she was hesitant to do that in the beginning of the episode.
Could be,
because it goes against everything, especially at the end of the episode when we see her basically say, like, I kept the TVA going for so long. So I really think that was her just fighting against her natural programming of, we can't make branch timelines. And it's an interesting thought, Brent, when you think about it, the way she's acted.
Yeah, because the TVA is now, or a representative of the TVA is now responsible for a Nexus event, which is everything they've tried to stop up until this point for who knows how many hundreds of years, at least 400, obviously, from episode 1. But Loki and Mobius, we do have theirs, and I thought there's this fun little bit that they just added in, and I heard a quote from the director. It basically was just added in for the fun of it. It's not seeding anything. It's not meant to mean anything. They just thought it'd be fun. Statues that really kind of bothered Loki. Thor, it's pretty obvious where that would bug him. Not that tall. All right, that was hilarious. Odin, of course, and that's not what Odin looks like according to Loki. And then Balder the Brave. Balder the Brave is he's one of Thor's brothers, at least in the comics, and he has multiple times has been like possibly about to be in the MCU. He's had concept art for him and stuff like that. Most notably, or most recently, like it's gotten the absolute closest with Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. He was going to be on the Illuminati that, well, presumably he would have got killed by, evil Wanda there.
Yeah. And this happens, same thing with Beta Ray Bill. You get these rumored characters that could show up. And again, Marvel, there is something to Kevin Feige's interview last week where he said he just scratched the surface. There is so many characters. They're so deep that we haven't seen yet. So who knows? Maybe down the line.
It's true. I don't know if I'm willing to say it's super true with the Thor group of characters. There are definitely characters we haven't seen yet. I personally would prefer Beta Ray Bill over Balder the Brave, but regardless, they find Renslayer. They Loki, Mobius are walking around. They're able to track down Renslayer because they hear a newspaper article about a ghost. Ghost that's basically haunting the town or haunting the World's Fair, and then they go to this thing from this presentation from Victor Timely where he's talking about the time continuum, and Victor Timely at this point. This is just where I'm going to remind everyone, yes, we're aware of the situation with Jonathan Majors. When there is something that comes out of it, then we'll talk about that. But for now, we're just going to focus on the show.
Welcome to our world of anytime Flash content came out prior to the Flash.
Right.
Yeah.
So in the case of Victor Timely, I thought it was a great performance. Is it my favorite version of Kang that we have seen to date? No, I wouldn't say that, but I thought it was a great performance and a really interesting version and an interesting start point for this character and a start point for effectively the origin of Kang, right? Like this is where he got the TVA manual and he's able to read it. And he says a couple times, he just can't get the technology to go. Like the tech isn't there to match what he's reading in the manual and as well as his own intelligence. But what he can do is be a con man, a grifter.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, he kind of always has been a con man. Even He Who Remains, like at that level, came off like a con man. And so it's kind of his shtick. So it's not too far out of the realm. Like you can see where Victor Timely would become a version of Kang who becomes He Who Remains.
Oh, 100%. I want to say that I've see elements in Victor Timely that we see in the Kang from Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. Quantumania.
Yeah.
And also shout out to that post-credit scene where we get it ties in exactly here. So I love that. And yeah, Brent, I thought he was going to be more intimidating from the post-credit scene in Ant-Man and the Wasp. Quantumania. I didn't think he was going to go as goofy as he did just from that into this, but I enjoyed it. I love the whole like canning the guys with the power and the pants. Oh my god, the pants that are supposed to make the guy taller.
Mechanical pants, yeah.
Mechanical pants. But it would make sense that you're dropped this futuristic TVA manual and you're in 1863. Of course, you're not going to be able to make 100% of the stuff in that. So again, it seemed like one of the designs in the book will get there. Well, I guess we'll wait and get to when he looks through the book a little bit. But one of them reminded me of something he used in Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. So.
Yeah. The Victor Timely, and for the record, in the comics, Victor Timely is named for Timely, as in Timely Comics, which was what Marvel was called before they were called Marvel. Even as a kid, I saw it pointed out that he was like making candles, which what are candles often like can be used for? Yes, light, but they can also be sources of time. You can use them to help track time. And Victor Timely, he is obsessed with it. I loved his time loom that he had created and showed there. And obviously, it really didn't do anything but light a light bulb or whatever. The grift that he pulled on this guy to jack up the price to $1,000 because he had a planted person to
cuts him in a little dollar on the slide under his hat. Perfect.
And I won't lie, like when I'm first watching it, I'm like, well, that guy just gave up awfully easily. And then you see him pay him off. You're like, okay, well, because he was in on it. So that makes sense. So story checks out there. But you commented about this version of Kang not being as intimidating, basically, right? Like not being as scary as what we thought we were going to get when we saw that scene in the credit scene of Quantumania. I think it's worth noting that Loki was still terrified by it.
Oh, yes.
But Mobius, not at all. He's like, I can't see it. You said this guy is terrified. Not at all. And I appreciated that reaction from him.
Same. And it would track. Like I said, he didn't pull this off. He pulled this off as more zany, eccentric. So you wouldn't think, wait, that guy is he who remains, who is sitting at the end controlling everything? No, that doesn't track to me. So I did like that, and you even see it with Renslayer, who doubts him at first when she's around him. So you can see why Mobius felt the same way, but Loki's seen him and at full force, so it would make sense why he is. And same thing with Sylvie, so it would make sense why all these people had their reactions to him.
And I love that Mobius sees him, and he's like, "Well, the mission just changed. We're here for Miss Minutes, but we found a He Who Remains variant." He's going to have the same temporal aura, or he probably does. We need to take him back to the TVA. And little surprised that Loki didn't just like use his powers to grab him and go, but plot armor. Because if they had done that, the whole episode would have been.
I had a question because I was watching this last episode back to back. I was like, what powers do Loki actually have? Because he couldn't even chase down that guy instead of using his like.
Could he? Couldn't he though? Or was he toying with that guy?
There you go.
Because he sure looked like he was having fun there.
That's true.
And I think we were seeing, last episode we were seeing a hint of the old Loki before all of the events of the Loki TV show had happened. But he didn't use those powers at all until Sylvie showed up.
Yeah.
I don't know, like B-15 calls and says, hey, Casey found this weird reading right in front of you. You're about to find it. And boom, there's Sylvie showing up ready to kill Victor Timely. Let's go ahead and ask this question. Do you think she was ever actually going to kill him?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I do think there's part of her that wants to, but again, just listening to them, even the prior episode, she doesn't want this timeline to be destroyed that she's jumped out onto, and if you don't help the TVA, it will happen. So I don't know if she did. She did a good job making Loki and the rest of us believe it if that's not true, and if it is, that poses a lot of more questions to me.
I think she believed she was going to, but I actually am starting to believe that this entire thing is one big loop. One giant thing. Chris talked about this before, and he sent me a text on it this morning where he said this is from Chris, it's kind of a paradox in which info or a person or an object is sent back in time and creates an infinite loop where the person or object has no observable origin. The person typically leaves behind something from the future for someone else to use. In other words, it behaves as if it has no origin. It's also called the ontological paradox. Basically, the implications that I think of this episode are that Victor Timely is He Who Remains. And He Who Remains set it up for Victor Timely to have the Nexus event, for Ravonna to create the next event that turns Victor Timely into it. I don't think, I believe Sylvie was really going to kill him, but I don't believe she was ever actually going to kill him because it was preordained, because I don't think there's free will in this case. And I believe that what they're in the middle of is a giant loop. And basically, I'm now feeling like the season is just going to end with, I know Chris brought up the possibility of Loki becoming the new He Who Remains. I think Victor Timely is going to become the new He Who Remains.
I have a different theory too of who potentially, I don't know about become He Who Remains, but run the TVA at the end of the season.
Okay, who do you want to save it, or do you want to go ahead?
No, I'll bring it out now. OB. I think
you think OB will be okay.
He's the only one that didn't get his mind wiped, because I think that he is basically the main source of information. He wrote the manual. He's writing the thing that Victor Timely is learning from. It's not from future He Who Remains. It's from OB. OB's the one that came up with all the ideas that he's using there and trying to pass them off on his own. So in a way, He Who Remains is the ultimate con man as well, because he's using OB's tech to create the whole TVA. And I do think that by the end of the season, because OB hasn't been able to go up and interact with the rest of the TVA agents, he's stuck down there in the bottom. I think by the end of this season, he's going to make a play for control of the TVA.
If it is a loop, you think at some point the loop is going to break and OB is going into it. I do think the loop is going to break. I just think it's more likely to happen in the Kang Dynasty with the Avengers. I think it's less likely to happen here. But regardless, you think
this is going to be on a giant loop with this whole thing?
Potentially, yeah. I potentially think the whole thing is a giant loop. Now, are they going to have to explain and shortcut some of that in Kang Dynasty? Of course they are. But I'm not convinced that. I'm just not convinced yet that we are going to have the Victor Timely and He Who Remains are variants of each other so much as the same person. Yeah, like the same variant. I don't know. I'm certainly open to it. If I'm wrong, cool, great. Then I'm wrong. But regardless, I think it
would make more sense, Brent, because why would He Who Remains set this whole plan up in motion in case he died? So that would lend a lot of credence to what you're saying there.
So while Sylvie is attacking, Loki basically protects him, and Victor Timely gets away. Sylvie and Loki are fighting each other, facing off, debating, whatever you want to call it. Victor Timely he gets away, and he runs away with Ravonna and Miss Minutes. At this point, I've never actually thought of Miss Minutes as having romantic feelings towards He Who Remains. Yes, she's always kind of seemed like there was a little bit of awestruck about him, but I kind of always chalk that up to programming, and the ego that He Who Remains would have. But in this, Miss Minutes basically manipulates the situation. As soon as Ravonna refers to herself as a partner, and they've already established in the episode that Timely does not work with partners, she manipulates him into trying to get rid of Ravonna. And goes on about how she wants to be his girl and wants to have a body so she can be with him. I did not expect this from Miss Minutes at all.
No, and I'm going to be honest with you. I was here for the first part of it, but the second part in his lab, that started to go a little extra weird for me.
Creepy, right?
Yeah, like her face on the mannequin and just like going the whole Pinocchio style of things. I want to be a real person.
Wants to be a real girl. Yeah, it was just like I've always thought Miss Minutes was an odd character, and she's always struck me as creepy since that "Hey y'all" at the beginning of episode 6 of season 1, when she just basically is like they turn her into a jump scare. Like I've ever since that, even looking back on this season, I'm like, okay, she is kind of creepy. But this was ratcheting it up to a whole new level for me.
Yeah, and the first part of it, I laughed when she was sitting next to Timely and laughing when he dumped her down in the water. I just laughed at that. But then, like you said, it got really creepy really quickly. I'm really glad he just basically put her back into the device and shut her down for the rest of this episode.
Yeah, and they had gone to this other lab of Victor's where he says he's got his pride and joy, and it's a small little orb thing. And I am forgetting the name of it from Quantumania, but in Quantumania, King had this orb thing that was supposed to be his power, right?
Yeah.
And so it's very similar. And I wonder, is this an early prototype of what we were going to see there? which I realize the point of Kang is the Nexus event happened, all these branches happened, we get all these very different versions of the Kang character that we saw at the end of Quantumania. But it did make me wonder, like, is there a timeline where Victor Timely becomes the Kang that we saw in Quantumania, who then goes on to become He Who Remains? And I know he got defeated in Quantumania, but he got dragged off. He wasn't killed.
Not killed, which is amazing.
Right. And side note, it's perfectly fine that in a movie called Ant-Man, ants were used to help win the day. I'm just going to go ahead and put that out there. Hot take. It's okay that ants were used in a movie called Ant-Man.
You mean like they used ants to help save the day in the first film and the second film?
Right. You got it.
Okay,
this is just, it's a complaint. I just don't, I'm like, what did you expect? It's Ant-Man. But anyway, I wonder if there is a timeline where that possibly happens. My guess is probably not. But because Kang is a pretty radical departure, but it would be interesting if there was a variant that was timely to Kang to He Who Remains. If Kang is kind of a stepping stone there. Regardless, Sylvie does show back up. Ravonna shows back up. Like, she catches up with him. She has a proto pruning stick, and she used it on that mannequin, right? And what I want to know is, did that mannequin go to that world with all the other Lokis from episode 5 of last year? Did the pruning actually work the way the pruning sticks in the TVA do?
Wouldn't be the oddest thing to get pruned and end up there, that's for certain.
It wouldn't, but it'd be a heck of a thing for Timely to pull off with the technology of that day. Or did it just disintegrate the thing?
I think it's more disintegration, but again, we don't know for sure. Like, I just with the technology he has there's no way.
Yeah, so this is the part where I started thinking about the did Sylvie ever have, like, I know we already talked about it, but this is really where I started thinking about, did Sylvie really have a choice? Because she at this point chose to let Victor go. He talked his way out of it, basically. And so he goes with Loki and Mobius to the TVA, and that's interesting, and I'm super curious what happens there. But I did not expect to see Sylvie kick Ravonna through a time door and end up back at the Citadel at the end of time with He Who Remains' rotting corpse just sitting there, which Chris said is a callback in the comics to Immortus, and the way his body was discovered. That was also super creepy to me. Looked absolutely disgusting. But I love that set. I love that environment because episode 6 of season 1 is one of my favorite episodes on all of Marvel Disney Plus. And so I'm just love to be back there, but I did not expect it. So here's the question, Travis. Are you ready? What is the secret that Miss Minutes knows about Ravonna Renslayer?
I think it's that she's a variant of Kang as well.
So I've seen a few people saying that. I hadn't come to that, like, I hadn't thought of that myself, but I saw other people say that, and I think that is a super interesting idea and would be quite the twist. Now, Ravonna Renslayer in the comics is like, she's like a space, like a princess of an alien civilization, right? And to answer Julio's question in the chat, was Ravonna important in the comics? She is important to Kang. She is important to Kang. She's not necessarily important beyond that, but I don't. The only question I have about this is, if they did that, if they go further down the possibility of a romantic relationship between some version of He Who Remains and Ravonna Renslayer, it's like Loki and Sylvie all over again.
Except I think that He Who Remains wiped Renslayer's mind and just had her be basically like, you're the vice principal, like you're the under of me, you're going to run the show for me, do everything for me, but I'm going to be the top person here. And I think that, like, he wiped her brain for, like,
doesn't that make it even creepier if they have 100%
creepy? 100%. I don't think they do anymore because of the partner stuff, right? I think. David has a good idea there in the chat as well. Daughter, perhaps?
Yeah, that she's daughter. Phil says maybe Miss Minutes reveals that Ravonna, she always dies. I certainly think that's a possibility. My guess is probably more along the lines of what Phil is thinking, in that she is always connected and there's always a version of her there, but I think it's not always this particular version. I want to suggest to people they read the King the Conqueror comic from 2021. It's 5 issues long. In it, an older Kang goes back in time to put his younger self on the path to becoming Kang. And in that, you see the different versions of Ravonna Renslayer and how important they are to Kang. It's a fantastic story. I absolutely recommend it. If you haven't read it yet, you should definitely move it to the top of your pile. 2021, King the Conqueror. It's on Marvel Unlimited, but of course you can buy it other places as well.
Kang just uses people. That's almost a standard trait for all the Kangs. And again, I think that he's using Renslayer just like he uses Miss Minutes and so on and so forth. Because he has to create Miss Minutes. Yeah. So that's a question I have for you. Do we think Miss Minutes will be destroyed by the end of this season or by the end of this show? And he have to create her again. And if you're on this loop that you're talking about, we're on, then there is going to have to be a time where she gets destroyed and then gets created.
Yes, if it really is a loop, like I'm currently thinking it is, then yes, I do believe we are going to see Miss Minutes get destroyed and probably Miss Minutes start to get created, as a chess opponent before she's given more information. And remember, I was already thinking along the loop to begin with, because I think in episode 1 this year, when Loki got pruned, saving him, I think he pruned himself in the future. I think we're going to see that point. I feel like this entire thing is one giant loop.
I think the next episode is. I thought I might have seen a preview for the next episode.
I didn't watch it. I don't watch it.
Not sure. I'm not sure if it came out after. Maybe.
I pretty much avoid them because it's about the only time I can go into an MCU thing without knowing anything about it.
Sure.
So I pretty much avoid the trailers once the show starts. Luckily, I don't search them out, and since it's not like regular TV, they don't just stick it on the end like they would, next time on Arrow or whatever it was.
Or the CW shows back in the day when you watch them on CW Seed and you haven't got to one of the shows yet, and they're showing you commercials.
The commercial for the next one. Yeah. That happened to me a few times. So all in all, I think this was a great episode. I do. I'm not quite sure. I if I had to rank them, maybe it's not quite up as the first two, but it's certainly not a bad one, and it just continues the streak of a great show. We're halfway through this season already, and I'm it's been all the talk, is there going to be a third season? I don't know, but I will tell you this: I would not be disappointed at all. This continues to be my favorite of the MCU shows.
Oh, 100%. I'm right there with you, Brent. This is easily my favorite of the MCU shows. I really enjoy Tom Hiddleston's performance as Loki, and it's gotten better. And Owen Wilson as Mobius, just top tier. And again, like I said, them back and forth. And I'm interested. I want us to go back to how Mobius was feeling the prior episode when the interrogation was starting about the timeline, because I do think that eventually he's going to want to see that jet ski. Or is that even a thing in his mind? I'm really interested to see that.
I saw some people saying like him trying to get on that tandem bicycle was like a precursor to them riding a jet ski together. I don't know.
Who knows?
But I love Loki's reaction. He's like, absolutely not. Like, I don't care what's going on. I'm not riding on that thing with you.
I have powers. No way.
Right. He does. He needs to use his powers a little bit more. But it was another fun episode. I am really excited for next week's. So with that, let's go ahead and take another ad break. And again, listeners, we don't control the volume. Turn it down a little bit if you want, and we will 3, 2, 1. We'll be right back. Okay. Travis, a couple days ago, I thought, and I even told Chris, looks like we're not having any news this week. And then we did get one little thing. There's a lot of rumors from a book, and we're going to talk about one of those. They are still technically rumors, so I don't want to call those news, but there's one thing out of that we'll touch on in the credit scene. But for right now, there is one hard piece of news that I do want to talk about and get your thoughts on. Deadpool 3 is moving from its May 3rd date, and this came from Deadline. Marvel has pretty much owned that weekend since Marvel existed. You can put an asterisk for Infinity War and Endgame if you want, because they moved them both up 1 week into the last weekend of April, but they still own that week with their second weeks. The first weekend of May has been Marvel's tentpole movie of the year. I think it's fair to say why Deadpool 3 was going to fit that. Ryan Reynolds, Hugh Jackman. Yes, that is going to be your tentpole of the year, but they're moving it. They can't make it. A few days ago, the director, Sean Levy, said that basically half the movie was done. Or something like they've shot half of it and they've edited half of it, but they still have half to go. And it's not looking good that they're going to make it. Well, sure enough, they're not. Captain America Brave New World currently has moved up to the May 3rd date. What do you think about all this?
I don't want them to rush on any of this. If they have to push
Amen.
everything back, I am fine. I don't want a situation where we're getting Captain America CGI similar to Black Widow. Like, I'm just remember the Elena staff blowing up. Just
Okay.
I want top tier. I don't want to go in watching the Flash be like, you had 2 years on this. What am I watching here? Like, I don't need that. So don't rush. If you have to push this stuff back, that's fine. Again, I think Brent would agree with me. Just pay the goddamn actors, please. This is getting forever frustrating. I don't know if you're doing this because you want to wait another month and a half, save a bit of money, and then go on into a push to make content because you just had the writers now, so they have to write everything before you can film anything. So I have read stuff like that where just the studios are stalling until they get the stuff ready to film because they just don't want to do it. That wouldn't make much sense to me because you don't really pay actors until they're acting. And again, you're going to have your VFX if you rush them. There's already the unionizing and all that. So you don't want to push this to strikes and all that terrible stuff. So again, we're okay. We have a lot of content. Remember the times when it was just like Smallville on TV and no movies?
Yes.
I'm completely fine with waiting. We have these great shows. And the thing with Marvel too is it's not like you're waiting to be like, oh my God, we got a year without content. You have Echo. I was going to just say Daredevil show, but yeah, I'm going to slow my row on that. But you have content coming out. So.
Yes, there's still What If. There's still What If supposed to be coming later this year.
Spider-Man.
Echo is supposed to be in January. There is absolutely other content that is coming.
Freshman year, yeah, Spider-Man freshman year as well. Like again,
no release date on that one, but
I thought it was 2024. But and X-Men 97
they may have
as well.
said that, but yes, X-Men 97 is definitely closer than freshman year is.
Yeah.
Pretty much, I agree with that. If they need more time to what I said with Daredevil, if they need more time to do it right, then give them more time. And if the studios are going to drag this out further before they inevitably cave, like they did with the WGA, and I really believe that's going to happen, then that's fine. I let them. I mean, I'm not happy for those people that actually affects financially, but I'm fine with waiting for these to come out so that the movies can be created the best possible version, and the people who work on them can still have a life outside the movies. Call me crazy, they should get to have those lives as well. Captain America Brave New World, we were talking about this in our network chat the other day because I couldn't remember how far it had gotten into photography, and I thought they had finished filming, and I was kind of right. They did principal photography. They finished that, but they haven't finished additional photography. And Loki season 2 was the first Marvel MCU project to not have additional photography. They went in, they knew what they wanted, and they were able to get it all at the same time. And I want to remind everybody, additional photography is sometimes planned from day one because sometimes it has to do with schedules for the actors. You can't get a particular actor until that additional photography time. It's not always a reshoot thing.
Aquaman, the first Aquaman, they did pickups because they wanted to get Dr. Stephen Shin, and you couldn't get Randall Park to play him.
That is a great example. You're absolutely right. Yeah. Yes. They did it because that's when they could do it with him.
Yeah.
So the question is, are they going to do on Captain America Brave New World additional photography? Were they already planning on doing additional photography, or were they just planning on doing true reshoots where they want to go back in and clean some stuff up? Because if it's just reshoots and there's not that much, they could make the date. Because since Principal had finished, production on the movie, photography had finished, but they've still been editing the movie. They've still been putting together the movie this whole time. So that side of it, they haven't lost anything. They've only lost the photography side. It's possible. I don't want them to rush it though. I love the Captain America movies. Like that's my favorite sub franchise within, going from First Avenger to Winter Soldier to Civil War.
Wait. Does that count if Deadpool 3 comes in and then now all the Deadpools are part of the MCU?
It would, yes. Really I do love the Deadpools, but it still would count it. Yes. And I realize Spider-Man's only in one of those movies and only for a few minutes, but the Captain America group of movies in the MCU is my favorite group of movies, and I absolutely love that cast, not just Steve Rogers, but the whole rest of the cast. I don't want it to be shortchanged because they're trying to hold that date. I would rather they just let the date go, get it back next year in 2024. I'm sure they've already got it marked for something. I don't know what it is. At this point, I don't trust any dates that far out, but I don't know. And I saw people were acting like the world was ending, and I'm like, did anyone really expect Deadpool 3 to hold that date? I don't think it was going to.
No, and again, it's I don't. Who cares about it being like May, the first week of May being Marvel's big date for getting big box office with their tentpole films. Deadpool will just create a new day that you can come back to in 2 years when you do Deadpool 4, or 3 years when you do Deadpool 4, and put out another film. Like you can just start a new thing, because I think the first or second Deadpool came out in Valentine's Day and
Mhm.
did gangbusters, and
Or
it
it
was
was
rated R.
it was definitely in February. I don't know if it was
Yeah.
Valentine's Day weekend, but it was definitely in February.
So again, I don't think these, as long as it's a good film, I don't really think it matters when they come out, especially when you got that Marvel Studios logo flashing before the opening credits. That is essentially a recipe for a great opening weekend.
That is going to be wild to see Marvel Studios in front of a Deadpool, like in front of
Yes,
Fox characters, right? I mean,
100% he's going to comment on that first. Like he's going to be there. I really think he's going to say something about that.
I hope he
Oh, we got
does.
the big bucks in front of us now, or something like
And
that.
Phil confirms first movie was February, second movie
Yeah,
was May. So
thanks,
the
Phil.
more traditional like May summer blockbuster time. Yes. At this point, I'm not surprised. I don't expect both of these movies. I don't expect Brave New World. I won't be surprised if it misses this date also. And Deadpool 3, I saw one site claiming all they did was swap dates.
Mhm.
Everything else I read, I couldn't find anything else to confirm that. Everything else just said Deadpool 3 didn't have a date anymore. So at this point, it'll come when it comes. We have plenty of content to enjoy, and you know, pay the actors, and maybe this kind of thing won't happen.
Oh, 100%. Like I said, I agree with you there. And again, we don't want them to rush things because we don't want to get bad films. We'll take, like same thing with with Daredevil. I'll take a scrap everything and restart it instead of getting a crappy series. I don't want that, especially with a character I love. And same thing with Captain America and Deadpool. We don't need to rush things. And I don't think Ryan Reynolds is going to rush when you have Hugh Jackman there. There's no way he's going to rush that film. So again, patience. That's the main thing here. We don't want anyone to be overworked.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and go on to some questions that we had come in. First up from Phil, who is in the chat. He says, since it's been revealed that the true definitive king hasn't been revealed yet, do we think we will see him by the end of season 2 of Loki? Are we going to get that true definitive one?
No, I think they're going to save that for a film instead.
So, like, probably the King Dynasty movie?
Maybe, man.
I think that is the most likely. The only question, or the asterisk I would put on this, is this loop theory, where if
Mhm.
it's actually the same guy,
Technically, we've
but
already seen him. Technically,
then
then, yeah,
technically we would have already seen him. But what we don't, I mean, if what we don't know is, even if we're seeing Victor Timely through He Who Remains, is it is it a variant and there's a different king out there that he's still
yeah,
like the sacred timeline king? So as of right now, we don't. And I will say a hole in this, well, not a hole in this theory, but a potential change that this theory puts about is, in the comics, King is the descendant of Reed Richards.
yeah,
And this would seemingly change that, because in the comics, yes, there was a Victor Timely who was king back in the 1800s, but it was king who traveled back in time. It wasn't a king born of that time. And as far as we know, that's what we saw in this episode. All right,
yeah.
next up from DC Outlaw. Do we think that Loki will don some fine Asgardian leather again by the end of this season, or his next appearance after it?
I'm not sure, Brent. We got the shadow
With the
of
horns?
his
Yeah,
horns.
it made me miss that look though.
Yes, 100%. I thought they were going to flash to him actually wearing it, and I got a little disappointed when Joseph showed him in suits. Uh, Maybe not, just because that was their opportunity, I think, for us to get something like that, and they didn't go that route.
I feel like if they're gonna do it, it'll be in the movie.
Hmm.
If it feels like on the show, that's not it's not his character, it's not his look, it's not his costume. He's more humble on the show. He is more humble than that. But I could see him, especially in a movie where if he goes to meet Thor, to meet back up with Thor, which, keep in mind, this is a very different Loki from where he last knew Thor, and obviously from what Thor knows. I could see him using his powers to put that costume back on as a way to like elevate his status in Thor's eyes. So like
Yeah,
he wouldn't be like felt like a commoner who's just wearing, a suit and tie to work.
that's all I want to see too, Brent, is another interaction between him and actual Thor.
if we don't get that, it'll be a missed opportunity. If we don't get to see Thor where he's at today with this version of Loki, it will absolutely be a missed. And don't get me wrong, I would love to see other characters interact with him as well, but it'll be a missed opportunity if we don't get to see it with Thor.
You mean like the
Avengers in general,
or the minute and a half or 9 minute, the 30-second banter between Captain America and Spider-Man, and that's all we got between them when we could have got some really heartfelt moments.
I would absolutely like to have had more than that, sure, of course. But at least the moments we got were great.
Yeah.
All right, from Omari, do we believe that Tom Hiddleston has redefined the Loki character in the same way that Robert Downey Jr. did with Tony Stark, or is he not at that point yet?
No, he's 100%. He's past that point since season 1 of Loki. He is Loki. He's going to be so hard to fill his shoes for the next person that takes on that role, whenever that will ever happen. But I do think he's in same category as Robert Downey Jr. Not in pay, just in terms of general audience association with the character. If you say Loki, most people that's who they're going to picture.
If you want me to like rank them, then no, I would still say Robert Downey Jr. is probably ahead. But is he in that league? Is he in that class? Yeah, I do think he is. And I'm reminded of, I don't remember the year, 2012, 2013, something like that. There's a Comic-Con where Tom Hiddleston came out on stage during the Marvel Studios Hall H panel, dressed as Loki, and controlled the crowd. Like they were chanting for him up until he told them all to stop. It's on YouTube. Just go find it if you haven't seen it. Like Loki is an extremely popular character. Like people love Tom Hiddleston, and they love Tom Hiddleston as Loki. And so again, is he on that level of Robert Downey Jr.? Probably not, but he's right under there. He's in that ballpark. He's in the same game at least.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, fact or fictions. Last week's I'm gonna jump. Last week I'll do the second one first because I already mentioned it, but Miss Minutes will not be in season 2, episode 3. 59% fiction. Well, they got it right. So good job to you guys. Mobius will leave the TVA and go back to his real life by the end of Loki season 2. 47% fact, 53% fiction. Okay, so 53% think Mobius will not get that happy ending, I guess. And then our third one, which technically was from Chris, at the end of Loki season 2, Loki will take the position of He Who Remains. Facts of 73%.
Said fact?
73% fact. 27% said fiction. And I would love to know what people think this week after this week's episode. I would love to know if people still feel that same way. I last week I said it. I leaned fiction on it, but it's a really interesting idea. I just don't want to miss that opportunity for Loki to interact with the Avengers. This week, I think it's even less likely to be the case.
I agree. I didn't think as much prior to after episode 2, but again, right after episode 3, no, I don't think so at all. In that.
All right, Travis, you're up this week. What do you got for me?
I'm going to hold my last one because I more think this possibly is a fiction now after looking at it, but I'm still going to throw it out there. But the first 3 I'm going to go with as my facts that I think are facts. OB will run the TVA at the end of the season.
It is an interesting theory. I'm going to have to go fiction on it again because I think we're looping, but I like the idea. And it'd be fun. I'll give you that. It would be fun.
He wrote the manual, Brent. He wrote the manual.
He did write the manual.
There's a picture of him in the autographing of the manual. Oh my god, just perfect. We will visit the timeline that Mobius was taken from this season.
Fact. I feel like that one's happening.
Yeah, I feel like from the previous episode, I do think that is happening after that got such an emotional rise out of Mobius.
When he says he's worried that it would be something good that he would be missing out on, I feel like you have to pay that off and either tell us was it good or was it bad. Like Loki's I could see Loki forcing him into it, but you got to pay that off.
100%. My last one of the ones I think are fiction or fact. Sylvie will be a member of the TVA by the end of the season. Just because she said multiple times this episode she wants to burn it to the ground, I do think that she'll be a TVA agent or member by the end of the season.
My gut reaction was fact. But she's already proven she'll just go to the TVA and walk in. They don't attack her. We saw her in the first episode. She just opens the door and says, "There you are." Not necessarily like she's hiding or sneaking around. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and say fact. I'm not a strong fact, but I feel like there's a non-zero chance of this.
Yes. Okay, and the final one that I think is more fiction now because a few of the future MCU projects are ground level. But I did say He Who Remains will show up in a post-credit scene in 2 of the next 5 MCU projects, and I think that is going to be a fiction. Maybe 1 now. If I could change it back now, I would have said 1 of the next 5. But
I'm gonna level with you. I don't even know what the next 5 MCU projects are
I do know
anymore
the
outside
Echo.
of What If and Echo. Outside of
Yeah.
What If and Echo, I'm like, I don't even. I guess the Marvels. So that's 3.
I think we might get 100% fiction on this one.
Potentially, assuming they hold dates for next year, Captain America and Deadpool. That big fight. I'm going to say fiction. No, it's not. I do think it's possible for one of them, but I
should have said 1. I got too excited with 2. I got too excited with 2.
So we're going fiction on it.
Yeah.
All right. Just a reminder, we're not doing Comic Club this week, but go ahead and read The Punisher, the 2000-2001 series, issue 6, and we will do that next week when Chris is back. So with that, Glenn, again, we want to plug Organic Press Books as our sponsor. Again, you can use the code MarvelGUA at checkout, and as well, Travis, where can we find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at Travis_156. You can drop me a line. We can chat about pretty much anything. I also host 2 shows on the GUA Podcast Network, DC Alliance, that goes live Thursdays for the next 4 weeks, and then it goes live Fridays going forward, and the Animation Nation that drops on Wednesdays as well. We're going through Rick and Morty now that's out. So Chris from Marvel Alliance joined me for the most recent episode, the first one
I saw
of the season. So that was a fun discussion, and again, I'm excited for the whole season.
Well, you can follow Chris at Chris Balga. I'm on Twitter at Brentech Prime, and that's what I use on the other socials that I'm on as well. And then on Twitter, we have at Marvel A Podcast. You can email the show at marvelalliancepodcast@gmail.com. Follow the Geek Ultimate Alliance at GUA Podcast, GUA Pod Network. Feel free to tweet or email or ask feedback or send in questions or your own fact or fictions anytime. Yes, I send out a tweet every week, but you don't have to wait for it. You can just just send it in and say, hey, it's for the show, and we will still save it. It's okay. You don't have to wait for those. If you think of a good question beforehand, just please, I'm just going to say it now. I don't even know if he started it yet, and I'm not that far into it. No Spider-Man 2 PS5 spoilers. Okay, I'm playing it. I'm 19% in as of this recording. I'm loving it. Please, no story spoiler. No, not just hold off on Spider-Man 2 for now. Chris and I we're going to talk about it in a few weeks when we both had a chance to actually get some time in with it. But just hold those questions. But anything else, send them in. All right, just send them in. And with that, thanks for listening, and Excelsior.
Bye, everyone.
All right, Travis. Post credits. There's rumors. It's Joanna Robinson, I think, who wrote this book. I have not read it. I looked at it. I might buy it, but I haven't read it yet. It's worth noting this book is not like an official sanctioned, to my knowledge, book with Marvel Studios directly. She is somebody with sources, though. She is somebody who you can't just discount just because she's not from Marvel. More often than not, what she says, there is grains of truth to, if not way more than a grain of truth. She basically implied Wonder Man could get axed or get completely reworked a la Daredevil. What do you think?
Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no.
I mean, for me, I hope it's the latter, mainly because it keeps the streak alive, right?
Yeah.
With every single announced project coming out in some form or another. Yes, Armor Wars was originally announced as a TV show and it's being moved to a movie. Yes, Inhumans was announced as a movie and it became a TV show. And no, you shouldn't bother to go watch it, but it exists. If you're a completionist, it exists. I just think it's fun to keep the streak alive. That said, if they need to can it, they need to can it. And these reports that have come out that when the Daredevil stuff came out, basically said they're going to act more like traditional TV. Well, in traditional TV, you cancel things. You start things and you stop them because they're not working, and you don't put good money in after bad. If for whatever reason they say that this project needs to be canned, okay, like in the grand scheme of things, fine. It does suck for those people who really do love that character and are like, we're really excited and looking forward to it. He's a character that I've always enjoyed, but I've never sought out. So I'm okay I'm okay with not seeing him anytime soon.
I am as well. If you told me, okay, we're going to shut this down and give us a Nova series, then yeah, okay, or a
Oh,
Ghost
man,
Rider
if I can make
series, or
yes.
a. So there's so many other characters that I would be okay with. I don't think that having Wonder Man in the grand scheme of things is going to help with like Kang Dynasty or storylines going in for that. So again, I don't. We could use other characters. There's so many characters that people have been still clamoring for from Marvel, and I don't think that Wonder Man's on the top of the list. You want to use him, fine, but again, he was a villain. To start, I think, maybe for Tony Stark. I vaguely
I don't
remember,
remember the specifics, but he was
or
definitely a
Avengers.
villain. He
Yeah.
was definitely a
So
villain at first.
again, I much would rather have. There's various other characters that I would rather have a series about. But if you're gonna like restart it, rework it, I'm sure. Again, Foggy's come in and started. I mean, not Foggy. Iger's come in and started to adjust things. It's not just content anymore. There needs to be steps and plans. So I'm completely okay with it if that's what they decide. Marvel has carte blanche with me, Brent. They've made so many right decisions. There's a couple of films I don't enjoy, but if you're batting at like a high 90% with me, I'm not going to get up in arms for decisions like this because I know you're probably doing it for the betterment of the story.
I've always admired how they overall stick to their plans.
Yeah.
But sometimes the right move is to change your plan.
Yeah.
And at this point, I'm with you. Even with the misstep that I feel was the final episode of Secret Invasion, I'm not suddenly on this bandwagon of oh my gosh, they're going under.
No.
It's
No.
okay. So all
that
right.
comes out after every project too. Marvel's MCU's in failure. MCU's going to die, like not going to go forward, reboot everything, and again, it just keeps going strong. Just look at the numbers. Numbers don't lie.
I mean, overall, I agree with you. Obviously, there's some things. Quantumania hasn't exactly didn't light up the box office. The Marvels is only projected 70 to 80 million last time I saw, which is a huge downswing from what the first movie did. But there's several reasons for why that would be. But okay, I think we can leave it there. And if if something official about Wonder Man comes out, I'm sure we will cover it on a future episode.
Perfect.